Because
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us, the California Department of Rehabilitation's National Disability Employment Awareness Month event. Quick housekeeping notes. We are in webinar mode, and we will only have our speakers on camera and our interpreters as well. We also have closed captioning available. It should be on the bottom toolbar of your screen. And if needed, you should hide non-video participants to only see a couple of boxes on your screen. We encourage everyone to use the chat function and to participate and engage in the discussion. And if you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A function in Zoom, or you can also submit your questions via questions@dor.ca.gov. The facilitators will be sharing questions with our moderator, Shannon Coleman, throughout the event. If you want us, another reminder, if you want us to email you to verify that you attended this 2-hour webinar at the end and the conclusion of our event, please email us at questions@dor.ca.gov, and we will send an email verifying that you were here. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Josefina Natsana, the Deputy Director of the Office of Legislation and Communication at the Department of Rehabilitation. And I'm going to turn it over to our Director, Joe Xavier.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Josefina, thank you very much. Good to have all of you joining us today. Appreciate that you're making a couple of hours to come together where we have an opportunity to share and learn from each other and learn a little bit more about employment for people with disabilities. So we have an esteemed panel that you will hear from today. So I just want to start by thanking them for making the time to contribute to today's event. And of course, the team that has been planning and is doing the logistics to support the event. Thank you to all of you for the work done. It is the 100th anniversary of the Rehabilitation Act, which provides both the authority as well as the ensuing funding to help individuals with disabilities attain, keep, and advance in employment. We are also celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, otherwise known as the Civil Rights Law for Individuals with Disabilities. Since 1945, the nation has recognized National Disability Employment Awareness Month. It is the opportunity for us to come together and to celebrate the contributions of the many individuals with disabilities make to the workforce each and every day. True access to competitive integrated employment provides the opportunity for individuals to live in a community of choice with purpose. And that's what this is all about each and every single day. So this month, let's dedicate ourselves to a true California for all, a California that includes all individuals with disabilities. So when we think of someone with disability, let's think of not only the 55 million individuals who have a disability, but there is the infant who was born today that will live a life of little or no expectation. There's the individual who is going home tonight and regretfully will be in a severe vehicle accident and tomorrow morning is a quadriplegic. And there is the individual who is in service to our community, our state, our country, and suffers an injury that brings about an acquired disability. We have that individual that because of illness will lose an eye, lose a limb, suffer other circumstances that cause them to also acquire a disability. But because regardless of how the individual acquires the disability, at the end of the day, everybody is entitled to that equal level playing field that provides them access to the same opportunity as everyone else. And what I wanted to call to your attention today is that no matter where we are in our careers and no matter where we are in the work that we're doing, that we leave no one behind. So let me ask you a couple of questions to get you thinking for today's event. When you imagine someone with hyper eye contact or someone that does not make eye contact, do you think of the individual who helped to build the tech industry, the Silicon Valley, the individual that is coveted today because of that unique talent? When you imagine the individual who has little to no physical capacity and speaks through a device, did you imagine the brilliance of a Stephen Hawking and the contributions that he has made to science in so many ways? When you imagine someone who is anxious or agitated, did you imagine our former Chief Deputy Director here at the Department of Rehabilitation? When you imagine somebody with Swiss cheese memory and speech problems and a range of other issues day by day, did you imagine the chief of our independent living section here at the Department of Rehabilitation? I want to give you a little bit of a primer for what this panel is going to spend some time on. And that is, what is truly the benefits that individuals with disabilities bring to each of us? And the vast majority of you on this call today are managers who are in a position to hire and provide opportunities for individuals. We bring strength and diversity to your workforce. We bring the strength and diversity that strengthens your workforce through the diversity that we bring. We bring a representation of 1/5 of the world's or the nation's population. We bring creativity, ingenuity, and problem-solving skills to your everyday work. And because we are part of the workforce, we also help the workforce programming and the services to be truly accessible and usable by all individuals, including individuals with disabilities. We develop alternative strategies that are often the strategies that end up getting used by everyone else, because it's the very nature that we have to deal with every single day as individuals with disabilities. So, in spite of the progress that we have made over all these years, individuals with disabilities still experience 70% unemployment rate. 70% of working age individuals with disabilities do not have a job. For you as hiring managers, that is a large, untapped pool of skilled, talented individuals to bring to your everyday workforce. So I'm going to stop my comments here and turn it over to our moderator for the day, Shannon Coleman. Shannon, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Joe. That was an amazing introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Coleman, and I'm from Department of Rehabilitation's Office of Civil Rights. And thank you for attending this event in honor of National Disability Employment Awareness Month, as some refer to it as NDEAM. Today's focus is about increasing opportunities and access for people with disabilities, and I am honored to be your moderator for this event. My goal for today's discussion is to address myth-busting, benefits, and recommendations to support the hiring of people with disabilities in state service. So, just a gentle reminder for today's discussion, I would like to ask that while you participate in today's event, to be mindful of the use of acronyms. So we do not want to confuse and alienate unfamiliar audiences, and we definitely do not want to overestimate an audience's familiarity. So confessional moment, actually, I wanted an acronym buzzer, but that's a whole different story. So we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda. Now we will have introductions from each of the panel members. As I call on each panelist, I am asking them to provide us with a brief introduction to include their background and what brings them here today. Panel members, please note, when called upon, you will have 2 minutes to respond without interruption. Now, let's hand it over to Scott Richmond for his introduction.
I'm Scott Richmond. I am currently the president of the Association of California State Employees with Disabilities. Prior to that, I retired from state service as a staff services manager too. I began my career in the late 1970s as a social services assistant, then promoted to voc rehab counselor, staff services analyst, associate governmental program analyst, manager 1, and then manager 2. Prior to that,
Hi, Scott. Just a gentle reminder to hit enter on your keyboard, please.
there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. There's just no video.
Oh, okay. Does that help?
No, but go ahead and continue.
Oh, okay. At any rate, prior to that, I went to California public schools, got a bachelor's degree in government from Cal State Sacramento, and then later a master's degree in rehabilitation counseling, also from the same institution. So I just want to say that, you know, working with people with disabilities brings you in contact with people who have all sorts of abilities and skills. And it's important to look past perhaps the initial imagery or thoughts that you may have when, as a hiring manager, you are confronted with an individual with a disability who is reporting for an interview. As you can tell from my background, I'm totally blind, but I had a successful education, a successful career, and now I've reached that blissful stage that we all aspire to of happy retirement. So that's my introduction. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott, and welcome. And thank you for being one of our panelists. We will now move on to Kim Rutledge. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Kim Rutledge. I tried to turn on my video. Oh, okay, here's the prompt. We're still figuring these things out. Okay, it's working now. Hi, my name is Kim Rutledge. I am the administrator for the Adult Protective Services Program at the California Department of Social Services. I have been in that role for almost a year now. And prior to that, I spent about 3.5 years at CDSS, acronym, at the Department of Social Services, overseeing policy and quality assurance for the in-home supportive services program. That was my first state job. Prior to that, I spent several years working for various advocacy organizations around in-home supportive services. And prior to my policy advocacy government career, I spent 12 years working as a newspaper journalist. Since we're doing things on Zoom and you can only see people from the shoulders up, I do have a physical disability. I use a power wheelchair and I don't have use of my arms, so I do almost everything with my feet. I have often been in employment situations where I'm the only person with a disability or one of very, very few, especially typically one of the only people with a really visible physical disability. So I've frequently been in every work environment I've ever worked in, the guinea pig for all kinds of resources, all kinds of services, figuring out access. And in the past few years, I've also been a hiring manager, so I've kind of gotten to experience on both sides of being both an employee and an employer, what it's like to have employees with disabilities as well as be an employee with a disability. And I think that this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I feel like in a perfect world, we shouldn't even really have to discuss it in these types of settings. But I'm glad that we are, and I'm glad to be here today. Shannon, you're now on mute.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for that too as well. We are glad to have you is what I was saying. And thank you for coming today to be one of our panelists. We will now move it on over to Vance Taylor. Take it away, Vance.
All right, thanks very much, Shannon. Appreciate it. I appreciate getting to be here. What a great topic. You know, I love this very much. I'm just such a firm believer that as we have representation, as we integrate and put that within the DNA of our organizations, that we end up with better products, better services, better outcomes, and really help move the whole community in an upward direction. My name's Luis. I go by Vance, which is my middle name. My last name is Taylor. And I'm the chief for the Office of Access and Functional Needs at the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services. And essentially that means I'm responsible for doing two things. The governor has tasked me with ensuring that we identify the needs that people with disabilities have before, during, and after a disaster. And also that we seek to understand access and functional needs and integrate them across the entirety of the state's emergency management systems. We see that there's a disproportionate impact on the way that disasters impact people with access and functional needs. And the best way we address that is by integrating people who have disabilities and different lived experiences within our operations and within the way we plan and within everything we do. I was born and raised in San Francisco Bay Area. I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy when I was 7 years old. I've been in a powered wheelchair and used that since I was in 6th grade. I went out of state for my undergrad and got a degree in communications at BYU. I moved to Washington, D.C., 3,000 miles away from everything I knew, for an internship that led to a job that led to me blinking and having 13 years pass. Meanwhile, I met the love of my life, got married, 2 beautiful kids. I got a master's in Homeland Security, had jobs advising 2 different members of Congress, directed security policy at a National Trade Association, and was a partner at a top-ranked Homeland Security and emergency management consulting firm. I just appreciate being here and appreciate being with this panel.
Thank you so much, Vance. We appreciate you being here as well. So now we will move on to Michael Thomas. Can you please introduce yourself?
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Thomas. I'm currently the Assistant Deputy Director of the Specialized Services Division here at the Department of Rehabilitation. Before that, I was what's called Protection and Advocacy for Beneficiaries of Social Security advocate and a Client Assistance Program advocate at Disability Rights California, which was a nonprofit organization.
Michael, did you get a prompt to turn your video on? My apologies for interrupting on the 2 minutes to respond without interruption. Did you get a prompt?
No, I didn't, but I will.
Okay.
Is it on?
No, that's okay. Keep going.
Okay.
Okay, thank you though.
Well, anyway, most of my career has been about helping people with disabilities get the rights they need to go back to work. Before that, I've always been a Social Security advocate for people with disabilities receiving SSI and SSDI, helping them to go back to work. Prior to that, I attended Cal State Sacramento and got a master's degree. Well, since you guys can't see me, I'm legally blind, and I got a master's degree in my home state of Mississippi way back in '84. So I've been around for a while, and everything has been helping people with disabilities to get the things that they need to go back to work. I find it amazing to be on this panel because all I've ever done is try to help people to get back to work and to be able to be here and to give my little information along with the other panelists as far as hiring people with disabilities is a great event for me, and I'm happy to be here and be a part of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And again, we're happy to have you. Let's move on to another panelist. Her name is Rachel Stewart. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me here today. For accessibility purposes, I want to give a quick audio description of myself. I am a white woman with bright peach colored hair, and I'm wearing a white collared shirt and dangly earrings. So I have been working in the disability and employment policy field for about the last 15 years, including serving as a Department of Rehabilitation staff manager over the California Committee on Employment of People with Disabilities and the California Youth Leadership Forum for Students with Disabilities, also known as YLF. So while I was working for YLF, I learned that I really love direct service and seeing a direct impact on the individuals that I worked with. So That takes me to my current job as coordinator and counselor for the Workability 3 program, which is funded through the Department of Rehabilitation to provide employment services to students attending any one of the 4 Los Rios community colleges, and that's in the greater Sacramento area. With regard to my personal background, I have used a wheelchair since the age of 5 due to a type of muscular dystrophy called spinal muscular atrophy. And I really feel that my experience as a wheelchair user gives me a unique perspective to the work that I do, because I've navigated all these systems myself. I've been on Medi-Cal, I've been on SSI, I've worked with Department of Rehabilitation, I've utilized Workability myself. I've had to go through the process of putting in reasonable accommodation requests, and the list goes on. And what I tell my students is that one of the many transferable skills that we gain as individuals with disabilities is learning how to navigate large bureaucracies and work in really complicated systems and policies, which is exactly the skills that you need to work in a company or a state department. And this is really aligned with kind of my big soapbox, which is empowering individuals with disabilities to be proud of their disability and recognize the strengths that they have because of it and not in spite of it. So I'd like to pass it back to you, Shannon.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you for coming to be in our panel and participating. I will now, excuse me, moving on to Araceli Holland for her introduction.
I think that worked. Hi, everybody. My name is Araceli Holland, and I am a regional director for the Department of Rehabilitation. I oversee the Central Valley, San Joaquin Valley District, which is a big, large chunk of California. I've been with the department for about 26 years. I have been a qualified rehabilitations professional, which is our counseling staff. I've been a supervisor, became a team manager, a district administrator, and now a regional director. Prior to working at the Department of Rehabilitation, I've also worked for behavioral health systems, the regional center systems, community action agencies, and Department of Human Services. So in all of my jobs, I've always worked at advocating for people with disabilities and also advocating for people from unserved and underserved populations. Coming from a family that was monolingual and also having what I would identify as a visible disability in myself, and a family that has had various types of disabilities, invisible disabilities, as well as physical disabilities. I've always found it sad that they were not able to access services. I was the family go-to for the applications, for understanding systems, for speaking to people. That interpreter that sometimes, the child interpreter that sometimes arrives with a parent, that was me. So I'm very familiar with how difficult it is for some people to access different services. So that's what brings me here, and that's what's always brought me to all of the positions that I have had, is how to become more accessible for all people who require our services. So that's who I am, and that's why I'm here, and I kept it under 2 minutes so that we can have more time.
Yes, thank you, Araceli. Because moderator, AKA, also means timekeeper. So thank you for that. So let's move on now to our next panelist, Tasneem Asa. I hope I said that right. My apologies if I did not.
Hi there. So my name is Tasneem Shah. Let's see if I can, with the background, I look all alien. But thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm really excited to speak to our attendees today and share our views. I am currently the College to Career Coordinator and Counselor at Sacramento City College, and it is a program that serves individuals with intellectual disabilities and autism to travel their journey from college into competitive integrated employment. I have been the coordinator and counselor from the start of the program, from the pilot in 2011, so 9 years now. And before that, I was at Folsom Lake College, and I was a coordinating assistant in the Disability Services program. serving all students with disabilities at that campus. It was during that time I pursued my master's in education, and I knew I wanted to be a counselor. And specifically with students with disabilities, because I got the opportunity to work at Folsom Lake College with students with disabilities, adults with disabilities, I should say. And it just gave me a whole new perspective of the advocacy that's needed and the support that's needed for these individuals. Before that, I actually worked as a behavior specialist, with children with autism for 3 years. And that was my love. I was going to follow that and work with children. And once I started working at Folsom Lake College, I changed my mind, as we sometimes do in our journey. I personally have always advocated for any student that was on their way to success and wanted to be their guide and their counselor. And I've been really blessed to be able to be in this work and be able to work with not just students, but our college community to better the environment, and also employers out in the community. So I'm very excited today. I recently, not recently, I mean, but a few years back, you know, I actually am a mother of a child with an IEP now. And being on that end, I should say, of the table, you become a bigger fighter and a bigger advocate for your child. And so I put my whole heart and soul into the job I do, because at work, those are my children, you know, and at home, I have my child who needs the support. So I think that's about it for me. I'm going to keep it at time as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, thank you for being here as one of our panelists. Now let's move on to our final panelist for introductions, which is Mark Ehrlichman.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Shannon. My name is Mark Ehrlichman. I'm the Deputy Director of our Employment Division here at the Department of Rehabilitation. We provide services and supports to job seekers with disabilities and service and resources to employers throughout California, including hopefully all of you as our state hiring managers. I've been in the department for about 26 years in multiple positions and roles. Prior to my current position, I've had multiple other managerial and leadership roles, including being an assistant deputy director, a district administrator, a staff services manager, and a rehabilitation supervisor. Started my career in this field really as a peer counselor, working with other people with disabilities, as well as a benefits counselor and a rehabilitation counselor, which was my first state job. I really got into this field because of my lived life experience with disability, managing depression and an anxiety disorder, but because this work also allows me to support others seeking to achieve employment, independence, and equality, even if and when things get hard. So it's been a privilege to work here for 26 years, because you'll say if you find a job that you like, you never have to work a day in your life. So thank you, Shannon.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. So as you can see, we have a very good panel for discussion today. So I hope everyone has their devices or notepads to take lots of notes, ask lots of questions, and take advantage of all of this knowledge that we are about to get. So with that said, we're gonna begin with the first question. When Governor Newsom came into office, one of the priorities set forth in the administration was diversity. In response, the governor created the Governor's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, tasked with making recommendations for improving diversity in state service, which includes improving representation of people with disabilities, with our own Department of Rehabilitation Director, Joe Xavier, serving as the chair. Now, the purpose of this task force is to ensure a statewide workforce that reflects the people of California. Diversity and inclusion are integral to our success in serving and responding to the needs of a diverse California population. So the first question, what do you think society first thinks when they think of diversity? I would like to pose this question first to Araceli Holland. Araceli?
Let me just start my video here, trying to learn technology on the fly here. So what do I think society first thinks when they think of diversity? I've been advocating for people from diverse backgrounds for access to systems for many, many years. And it's been my experience that when we talk about diversity, the first thing that pops into other people's minds is racial quotas, whether it be in programs, educational institutions, or the workplace in general. Some have even compared it to some type of a reverse discrimination. So to be honest, until recently, it's not a subject that has been well received by some organizations or hiring entities, and it may have a negative connotation for some hiring employers. It's the big unknown. It's been my experience that employers still look at diversity from maybe a quota perspective. Do we have enough of individuals from certain groups? And we might often use it kind of like a check-off system when hiring people from diverse backgrounds. We have been stuck in a sort of different type of mandated hire framework that hasn't really served us well. Many managers still kind of look towards hiring staff that are similar in values and align with the teams the team thinking. We tend to avoid hiring staff that make us think differently and challenge our views or ways of thinking. So I think this is the kind of framework, and we need to reframe what diversity in the workplace is and what it really means. And I think that the current COVID-19 pandemic did show us that perhaps many of our systems were not aligned in a way that we could effectively implement planning or responses to emergencies, that we're not as connected to our local communities as we have previously thought. So for me, diversity in the workplace is being reflective of the people who reside in the great state of California. In order to serve a diverse population effectively, we need to have a diverse workforce that can relate to the communities that we are serving, and the different perspectives, and to be challenged by different views and different ways of thinking to help us to develop different systems that are definitely more inclusive for Californians. So I think we are making a lot of headway these days on redefining what diversity and inclusion is. I'm mature enough to have gone the first wave of looking at diversity and seeing that we've made some positive steps forward, and we took a lot back. So I'm hoping that in this new environment that we are really embracing what diversity truly means, and to see the potential of what it really is for our workplace.
Great, thank you so much, Araceli. So Rachel, what do you think society first thinks when they think of diversity?
So I think that's a great question. And I think that Araceli had a lot of really important points. I think that in general, our larger society does not think of disability when they hear the word diversity. I think we are making headway. Actually, this morning, we just worked with UC Davis Health and UC Davis as a group to talk more about hiring, and they really do get it. They see disability as a type of diversity, and so I think we're moving in the right direction. But I think a lot of this comes from the idea that in larger society we're taught to view disability not as diversity, but as something that is bad in quotation marks, and something that needs to be cured or fixed, which is like aligned with what we call the medical model of disability. And, for myself, I see disability as just a normal, natural type of human diversity and human variation, just like gender or race. And it's neither good nor bad, it's just what it is. And I think that this way of conceptualizing disability is more aligned with what we call the social model of disability, and also the neurodiversity movement, which points to the role of the social environment in creating, inaccessible environments or negative attitudes and stereotypes in creating the problems that we see related to disability. The other thing that I think is important to mention when we're talking about diversity is this idea of intersectionality. And this is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw to discuss the experience of Black women as being a very unique experience. And so I think that it's important to recognize that people with disabilities may have lots of different diverse identities that result in them having different types of experiences and perspectives, which serves to further increase diversity and out-of-the-box thinking in the workplace. And, you know, just kind of picking up what Araceli mentioned was also that, you know, if we're looking at, there's lots of different, I would say, like statistics around how many people with disabilities there are in the US, but I'll say 10%, right? That's like one number that's been quoted. So we want to make sure that we're reflecting 10% of our customer base. So that diversity, I think, is really important when we think about disability. So.
Oh, good. Great, Rachel. Thank you for those. Those are some really important points. And I see, Kim, you had your video on. Did you want to respond to the question? What do you think society first thinks of when they think of diversity?
Yes. So I first of all want to say that both Araceli and Rachel brought up some very good points to this. And I'm going to kind of piggyback on some of the things that Rachel said around intersectionality. Just recently, I was involved in a training for several hundred upper-level state managers on diversity. It was an outside speaker who came in and spoke at great length about diversity in hiring, implicit bias, which is the biases that you have kind of in the back of your mind when you see a person and you have an immediate reaction. And this was a fantastic training. It was 3 hours long, but at no point during this training was disability ever brought up. And so this was on Zoom. At one point, I put in the chat to the moderator, who is a implicit bias expert who does these trainings all over the country, how disability is addressed. And he didn't even know really where to start, which I found to be rather startling, because I think that implicit bias is a huge problem that we face when it comes to diversity and the way that disability is seen in society. I think that not only is disability, even among other diversity communities, seen necessarily as a piece of the bigger diversity community, but I think that as people with disabilities, we face a lot of the same implicit biases. I think that someone looks at a person with a disability and doesn't necessarily see someone who can work, or someone who can make a contribution in the same way that someone who does not have a disability does. I'm also involved at the Department of Social Services and a lot of our diversity work. And I feel like I'm always the person in the back row who's always like, don't forget disability, don't forget disability.
Yeah.
And I think that especially in a department that serves people that fall into every category of diversity, and serves people with our programs that have disabilities, I think that sometimes we don't stop and think about that as a bigger piece of the diversity picture, which is unfortunate. And something that I think that we definitely need to change from an organizational culture standard.
Thank you, Kim. Some valid points there. And awareness is very important. So Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add to this question on what you think society first thinks when they think of disability?
Well, the speakers before have touched a lot of things that I would like to say, but one of the things that I also would like to contribute to this discussion is that when we do look at, as Kim just said, is when we do look at disability, a lot of times when we do look at diversity, disability is not included in that, because a lot of times we don't see disability as diversity. We see whether it's going to be race or gender or these things, but disability is just as common as other aspects, and it should be included as one of those aspects of diversity that we look for. But in a lot of times it's not included, but it should be. And that's one of the things that, you know, I'm excited about being on this panel is about bringing disability as a part of diversity all together as one, instead of looking at it as different. Because as Kim said, there's different abilities, different things that a person with disability can bring to the hiring process, the job, just like everyone else, and they should be considered when we're looking at diversity, and not just, hey, well, they may not be able to do the job because they have a disability. So
Yeah.
that's just one of the things I wanted to include.
Okay, and we will touch upon that a little bit later too as well. So I'm gonna come back to you, Michael. Okay.
Okay, I'll be here.
Okay, so let's just pause for a little bit for questions and answers from the chat from Josefina or Connie. Connie, are you doing the Q&A? Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Connie Nakano. I'm Public Information Officer with Department of Rehabilitation. So just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to ask away. Make sure you ask your question under the Q&A box so that we're able to see it. If you're putting it in the chat box, it's a little hard for us to fish out the questions because there's a lot of good comments going through the chat feature, but we want to make sure we see your questions. So just remember to send it through the Q&A section versus the chat section. You'll see those boxes on the bottom of your screen. So we do have one question. So what would the panel recommend to a person with a disability or their supervisor who reveals they are an individual who has an invisible disability and then believes they are treated differently? Is there a panel member that would like to take that question? You want me to repeat it again?
This is Araceli. I can try to speak to that. Okay, let me do this. Okay. This is a conversation that we've been having often here at the Department of Rehabilitation. We have a effort going on right now so that we can be build an even more inclusive environment where people feel comfortable working here at the department, including those individuals from the LGBTQ community, but also those individuals that have invisible or hidden disabilities. So a lot of the conversations that we've had, we've spoken directly to staff members and listened to their experiences. And it's a very complicated and difficult conversation to have, and not a conversation that people are feel comfortable having. But one thing I want to say is I really have a lot of respect for especially the younger generation that is very open about who they are and what they need. So I think if somebody comes to me and says and discloses that they do have a hidden disability, I think I would like to engage with them in a conversation at their following their guidance on how comfortable they are, having a discussion on how I can help, and is there anything that I need to know about making them feel more inclusive in the workplace. So if somebody is complaining, I think it's worth a conversation. Of course, there's a lot of other measures that probably needs to happen in terms of how we deal with complaints. And Shannon can speak to that.
Yes.
But I think as a manager, I want to understand, and I really do reach out to my staff and try to understand.
Thank you, Araceli. And yes, with the Office of Civil Rights, we are trying to change the approach for individuals who have a hidden disability. And we would like to work more with the manager, like Araceli mentioned, especially when we're trying to figure out if they need a reasonable accommodation or if they don't need a reasonable accommodation. And so we're trying to offer more of a supportive approach. And I was wondering if maybe Mark Ehrlichman, because I've seen his mic come off, if he had any additional comments to that because we have actually asked his advisement on a couple of situations that we have helped with and counseled. So Mark, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. And we take this, like many other things, as a teaching or a training opportunity. If somebody has come forward with a hidden disability or disclosed the disability in general, and there's been a reaction to that, and it sounds like may not have been a positive reaction to that, we really see that as an opportunity to educate. So one of the things that we do offer, and then I'll talk about some resources towards the end of today's meeting, but we can go out and provide disability etiquette and awareness training. Because really what we find often is that there is a hesitancy on both parts to enter into a conversation. Either the person themselves that may not want to disclose, or the manager may not want to have a conversation about a condition or conditions, just because there's particularly for hidden disabilities, there's a very strong stigma. And so one of the things that we like to do is when we do that training is really kind of create an atmosphere or a culture where a conversation can occur. And so people can bring it forward and demystify the disability or the condition that may impact the employee or the individual that's applying for a job, but also really educate the manager that that it isn't that accommodation conversations are not hard. They may be hard to start, but once you get going, they really are they tend to be very productive and very constructive. And for example, when I had my accommodation conversation with my manager for the first time, and it was way too late. I wish it would have done it much earlier. It really once we started talking about it, it really made it be a comfortable setting, and it also allowed for us to work towards solutions. And one of the things we tell our managers is typically the employee or the person with the disability is the best expert about their accommodation needs. So you don't have to be an expert, and you don't have to be afraid to bring it up, because that employee really can talk about what works for them. So it is that demystifying it, and it really starts by being able to have a conversation. And so we recommend either we do a disability etiquette and awareness training, or that manager goes to a training on their own about disabilities, because it is about breaking down those myths so you can have the real conversations. First, and hopefully today will be an opportunity for us to break down some of those myths, as well as give you some resources and tools to approach these situations in the future. So, thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark. Connie, do we have any more questions, or shall we move on? Connie, you're muted.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I think we can maybe do one more question. So how would you address a hiring manager who, following an in-person interview, made comments about someone with a physical disability and their inability to perform the job they are hiring for?
Okay, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. How would you address a hiring manager who, following an in-person interview, made comments about someone with a physical disability and their inability to perform the job they are hiring for?
That's a good question. Who wants to take that one?
This is Tasneem. So I will answer it based on my experience with my students.
Thank you.
And I have had this question actually from employers. And I think what I heard from a couple of our panelists just a couple of minutes ago, like Mark, mentioning that the conversation is needed. Araceli mentioned it as well. A conversation is really important. What I found in my experience is that the employer was not as educated in the language of disability, and kind of came from a background of having mostly employees in their unit that did not have physical disabilities. And I think inviting them to have that conversation in a kind manner and asking questions if they've had other people work in their unit or in their workplace with disabilities is a good start, because it'll give you an indication whether they've had experience or not. And then also providing the resources of where they can actually bring, like, you know, Department of Rehabilitation to come in, do a training for their staff, and they're always available, and providing that resource to them is really important. I mean, I'm not surprised, but those who don't work in the disability world, I guess sometimes maybe forget that, you know, they, it's a really ugly judgment. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. It's a really ugly judgment, and they may not realize it. So educating, I think, is the first and foremost thing. Bringing that conversation to the forefront. Whether you feel uncomfortable, I think, is really important, because these are conversations that we need to be having if we're going to be advocates out there. But I think the conversation is really important, because you need to get some background on where that person is coming from, why they think the way they do, and then providing them with some feedback and resources where they can get I mean, I've invited the employer to have their staff trained. I mean, what I was really trying to say is you need to be included in the training as well. And luckily they felt comfortable enough mentioning something, even if it came off as disrespectful, I think. But they mentioned it, and that's the only way I knew. And I've had this with a couple of employers in the past who have interviewed my students. So I just say conversation.
Thank you so much, Tasneem. Thank you very much. So we will keep moving on. And I know that Kim, you had already touched on this a little bit about bringing disability as a part of diversity. So can you answer the question of what do you think society thinks when it thinks of disability?
So when I was assigned this question and I was going through and making some talking points for this, I thought initially it was going to be a very easy question to answer. And then when I got to digging in and really thinking, it's actually quite complex. I think that the jaded part of me who has lived with a disability my entire life and grew up in a small town in the middle of Kansas in the 70s and 80s, where I was the only person with a disability in my entire school district, from kindergarten all the way up through high school. I see that kind of the stereotypical view of people with disability is that we are either pitied or used as tools for inspiration. A lot of times both simultaneously. So it goes back to the medical model versus social model of disability that Rachel touched on earlier, where a lot of people see disability as something that needs to be fixed, that we need to be fixed in order to accommodate the environment and not vice versa. And I think that that view is really perpetrated in popular culture and in the media. We don't see a lot of people with disabilities portrayed as functioning members of society, people who have jobs, careers, families, social lives, all of these different things. But on the flip side, I also think that this depends a lot on age and generation. I think that I have a 17-year-old stepson, and when we talk about lots of different issues of diversity, whether it be race and ethnicity or sexuality or disability, his attitude is just sort of like, well, why can't that person do the same thing that everyone else does? Or why would somebody think that this person's less than that person? And that gives me a lot of hope for the future. I think that Gen Z in particular seems to look at disability and lots of different parts of diversity from a much more open-minded perspective, as older generations have been known to. I remember being a little kid, and like I said, I was really the only child with a visible physical disability in the entire small town I grew up in. And so all the time, when I was a kid, somebody came to my grandmother and once said that it was too bad that they couldn't just put me away in an institution and not have to deal with me. I was, they wanted to not put an elevator in my middle school because it was going to cost too much money and I was going to be the only kid to use it. And then my parents advocated to have the elevator put in, and many other children who couldn't climb the stairs, whether they had a broken leg or a disability or anything else, used that elevator for many, many years after that. So I think that society has often looked at disability as something that needs to be fixed, and people with disabilities as either people like, oh, you're doing that thing, it's so wonderful, or, oh, it's too bad you're the way that you are. And I think really at the end of the day, having conversations like this and having kind of gradual cultural changes is changing the way that society thinks when they think about disability. But I think that there can always be more that can be done to change the way, especially that we are portrayed in the media and in our popular culture.
Great. Thank you so much, Kim. So Vance, would you like to add to this? Because you shared an amazing story earlier. So what do you think that society thinks when they think of disability?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate everything Kim had to say about it as well. I think, you know, it's interesting because the reality is that I think they focus on the this part of it, right? That there is, I think, kind of a negative association. There's a lot of stereotypes. I think it's definitely not something that people would look to and say, well, it's appealing, or I would like to experience that. I think that people, whether it's viewed disability or any other challenge, tend to see the obstacle, not the opportunity. And so they see disability as a barrier. And I think that there's also some shame associated with disability. And that's certainly been the case historically. If you had a disability, if your child had a disability, you know, they were to be put away, right? That was a blight on society. And what's happened is that you've had generations of individuals with disabilities who have grown up feeling less than, who have grown up without recognizing their worth or feeling valued. And so to me, that's tragic. And what really the cost has been, not just the overall sense of marginalization, but the loss to society, right? When you think about the talents and capabilities, when you think about the intelligence and ingenuity and innovation that people with disabilities have, and when they bring that to the market, if you will, either through universities or private sector entities or through other avenues, society as a whole benefits. And so I think in putting those negative stereotypes onto people with disabilities, society has inadvertently, but certainly robbed itself of a tremendous opportunity to learn, to grow, and to develop in a way that only happens when we appreciate and respect that people with different lived experiences bring something to the table. And so I think we're starting to be at a better place, not just because social justice is on the front of people's minds right now, which is wonderful, but I think also because there is this recognition that for too long, disability hasn't been included, not specifically anyway, under the broad tent of diversity. If you look, for example, at most companies' websites, and they talk about diversity and inclusion, they don't typically call out disability, not as one of the pillars. And that's, I think, just now starting to be recognized and just now starting to change. And so I think it's a very exciting time because we're finally to that point where we're recognizing that merit and value and capability are really what's going to drive us as a society. And it's much less about the individual characteristics of the people that bring that talent and ingenuity into the conversation. And I think these conversations help, right? Because these conversations, people see individuals with disabilities. And they say, hey, they're essentially just like me, just like anyone else. We're all trying to live our best life. We're all trying to be good people. We're all trying to contribute. And each of us does that in our own unique way. And so I feel optimistic. But I would say that we still have to really push and fight and rally against that long historical narrative that has for too long existed around the word disability and around individuals with disabilities.
Thank you so much, Vance. I really appreciate that because you and some of the other panelist members have touched on the fear of stereotypes. Because everyone's fighting some kind of stereotype and people with disabilities are no exception. The difference is that barriers people with disabilities face begin with people's attitudes, and these attitudes are often rooted in misinformation and misunderstandings about what it's like to live with a disability. So we're going to move on to the next question, and I want to pose this question to Scott. What do you think makes employers reluctant to hire people with disabilities? Scott, if you can click Alt-V to turn on your video and answer the question, we would greatly appreciate it.
Can you see me?
No.
Uh-oh.
Press enter.
How about that?
No.
Oh my goodness.
Uh-oh.
Alt-V.
I did Alt-V and it's not working for me.
Okay, so go ahead and answer the question if you can, please.
I certainly will, Shannon. Thank you so much. If I'd known you couldn't see me, I wouldn't have gone to the trouble of getting this dressed up.
Oh, that's okay. We can hear you, so.
I think that the receptivity to hiring individuals with disabilities depends an awful lot on a hiring manager's exposure to real people in real life who have disabilities. If a hiring manager has never really known someone with a disability, they're probably subject to a lot of the attitudes and beliefs that the other panelists have been talking about. And they, if confronted with an individual who is seeking a job with them, they might face some fears on a very personal and visceral level, like, gee, this person is a little bit different than I am. I'm not quite sure how I should act or behave around this person. What should I do? What should I say? I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm a little uncertain. Well, that's kind of the first hurdle, and we tend to shy away from things that we don't know or that we're uncertain about because we're a little bit fearful of them. So a candidate with a disability may have one strike against them already before they even start the interview process. I think the next thing that comes across the hiring manager's mind is, how is this person ever going to do the job? How is a blind person going to be able to read all the material that they're going to need to read? How is a deaf person going to be able to be a participant on a team when they are going to have difficulty communicating in meetings or one-to-one? Or how's a person with a mobility or a speech disorder going to navigate a facility or communicate effectively in the workplace? Well, there are lots of solutions to all those things. We call that reasonable accommodation. And there are a variety of ways in which to do it, all uniquely tailored to the individual's needs and capabilities. But managers need to get past that idea that disability means can't do, that they can't do all of the job or certain aspects of the job, and therefore we need to hire somebody else. I think another thing that crosses hiring managers' minds, we tend to equate disability with illness. And a manager may be thinking, gee, if I hire this person, they may miss a lot of time. And that means the production in my unit may not be what it could be, or I've got to throw an added workload on that person's coworkers, which is going to make both me and them unpopular. Well, I think there are a myriad of statistics to show that people with disabilities don't miss more time than the average Joe or Jane. They tend to be dedicated to their jobs. Oftentimes, they tend to be more dedicated to their jobs than their able-bodied coworkers. I've certainly seen that in my own experience as a first and second level manager. So I think we kind of need to get past some of these ideas, impressions, stereotypes that we're confronted with. It's great if a manager has had some positive experiences with a person with a disability, particularly if it's in their working life, when they see that a person with disability may do something a little bit differently, but the result is the same. The quality and the production are the same. So we need to focus on the objective criteria that the person is qualified, they've met the qualifications to be interviewed for the position. They've shown that in all other respects, other than disability, they're as capable as anyone else. So we need to look past some of those stereotypes and just look at the objective evidence. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Scott. And I agree, we have to address some of these myths, and we have to decrease that 70% unemployment rate that Director Joe Xavier quoted at the beginning. So I would love to have Rachel answer this question as well, because you actually touched on this a little bit earlier. So can you expand on your ideas for us, please?
Yeah, I think Scott made some great points. I think that there's a lot of myths and stereotypes about what people with disabilities are capable of in the workplace. And, you know, I think one of those things that hiring managers may be nervous about is the fact that, you know, they're thinking, oh, accommodations are going to be so expensive. I'm never going to be able to afford that employee. And, you know, I think the data is not there. You know, I think the majority of accommodations cost nothing, including restructuring job duties or, you know, maybe a work from home situation. And of those that do cost, you know, the average is about $500. There's also a lot of sources for financial assistance for accommodations or tax write-offs, things like that. I think another major assumption is thinking that people with disabilities don't have the skills that I need. They're not going to be able to fill this position. I think, with the passage of Section 504 of the Rehab Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, so many more people with disabilities are going to college and getting certificates, getting advanced degrees, and more individuals are also getting work experience, either through their own, on their own, or through programs like Workability. Shameless plug, we have lots of job-ready candidates in the IT, accounting, office assistant fields, just really dying to get an opportunity to work or volunteer for the state. So hit me up if you have any positions or volunteer opportunities to offer. So I think another assumption is people with disabilities are unreliable employees. I think hiring managers may be nervous that they're going to be out sick a lot, they're going to be frequently late. However, many individuals with disabilities have had to learn how to manage their disability for a very long time. So, they understand the ins and outs of taking care of themselves, resting if needed, and really being able to, bring their best self forward in the workplace. And, I think the other thing that's important to mention is that we have plenty of other employees that maybe don't have disabilities that need to take an occasional sick day to accommodate, for whatever reason. And, maybe they have children that frequently get sick. So, I think everybody's going to need to take an occasional sick day, and that's okay. And I also think that now that work from home has really expanded through COVID, where, there's jobs that people never envisioned being able to do from home. Suddenly, within the snap of a finger, everybody can work from home. So I think that's going to open up, hopefully, a lot of opportunities for, if somebody is having a disability related flare up, that they can work in the comfort of their own environment and continue performing their job duties. With regard to being late, I think that's kind of a fear for some folks, especially if they don't drive. If they take public transportation, a lot of my students know the bus schedule like the back of their hand. It's their primary mode of transportation. So they're very comfortable with that and, can be very valuable employees. They just need the opportunity to prove themselves. And, I think a lot of these stereotypes are based on assumptions. And, we all know what happens when we assume things, right? I'm not going to finish the sentence, but that, I think that it's important to keep in mind that we can't make these assumptions.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate it. And I know, Vance, you did touch on this already. Did you have any brief additional comments, or are you okay with moving on to the next question?
Everybody did a great job, so I think moving on is appropriate.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Vance. All right, so now that we kind of discussed like what is the myths and the stereotypes behind people with disabilities, and we've discussed the benefits of hiring people with disabilities. Well, we haven't discussed that yet because that is the next question. That's what I was getting into. So I just want to know from the panel, what are the benefits of hiring people with disabilities after we have discussed like all these myths, all these stereotypes, diversity, inclusion. So what are the benefits of hiring people with disabilities? Let's go to Tasneem.
Thank you. Here's my janky video again. I thought I would be so good with this background, and now I'm just sketching. Anyway, so I think this is a great follow-up from what Rachel just responded. So, I also work at Sacramento City College, and Rachel is my neighbor, my office neighbor. And both our programs are funded by Department of Rehabilitation. The benefits of, in a general sense, when we're thinking about a general sense, I think hiring people with disabilities are, workplace diversity, the motivation that individuals come with to work. So workplace retention is huge. And that's something employers need to know, is that they are motivated to work, which means that they're going to remain in the job as long as they're doing the job great and they're enjoying themselves and actually are included. This inclusivity that we keep talking about is extremely important. And I think some things that we forget are that, you know, we talk about high productivity, and that's because individuals are motivated to work. She kind of talked about something I was going to talk about, but I'm going to just piggyback off of it, is that in the program that I coordinate, it's college to career. So not only are we, our students having the opportunity to have this foundation in education and earn a certificate or a higher degree in order to, you know, attain entry-level jobs possibly in the community, they are getting through college to career the prepared work environment. So getting ready for the world of work, right? So work experience through internships out in the community is what I set them up with. And most of my students will experience 1 to 3 internships while they're with me in the program still. And then once they're placed in a job, they're working, they are ready. I mean, they go through 1 year of job readiness, job development class. They learn all the ins and outs of workplace etiquette, do's and don'ts, interview etiquette, dress for success, everything you could think about that goes into preparation for a job. They create a beautiful portfolio with everything in it. The one thing that I would like to say is that our students come in different, you know, very diverse. We have a very diverse set of students, even though we serve a particular disability. And that means that every individual, even on this panel, even in our attendees, we're also unique in our abilities and our strengths. And same with the students that are coming from college. They get to experience college, then they are ready to work and make a meaningful paycheck. I think that's something to kind of remember. I think I want to share a couple of success stories if I can, because I think that makes it more real for me. I think experience speaks volumes. One success story that we have is I early on had set up a student with the Department of Corrections as an intern. And as I was speaking to the manager, they said, yep, we'll provide this opportunity. And, you know, the student was in 6 units. And so they were able to do the internship. The student still works for the Department of Corrections. And this is 9 years later, is doing amazing, has promoted, went on to actually higher education. They finished their AA degree, and then they went on to higher education at Sac State. And initially, the student was very reluctant. They're like, okay, I'll just get an entry-level job. I'll just make a paycheck, make rent. It makes a bigger difference when the workplace is inclusive and accepting, and actually sees the individual as being able to do the job and not the disability, whether it's physical or invisible or, you know, in any way. Basically, we prepare our students to do the job, not to be a hindrance in any way in a workplace. And I think employers need to hear that more. I know we're going to address, you know, best methods of interviewing later, but I think another success story is I had a student set up at the Department of General Services under a wonderful, positive manager. And it was an internship, and he was a student who actually did not have a physical disability, but was clearly nonverbal. He had very limited language. And I went into the interview but sat outside, and I let the manager know, if you need me, I'm here just for extra support or anything. And the student, you know, kind of pointed to answers, and then I went in halfway through and kind of helped. And she was very welcoming. She provided the internship, which was amazing. The one thing that the manager did not realize is how fast this individual worked. So he actually typed 100 words a minute with no errors. This was his normal typing. So I always felt ashamed being around my student, because I learned to peck. But my point is that she actually had students from Sac State who would come in and intern for the whole semester. He finished a 2-year project of data entry of spreadsheet after spreadsheet within 45 minutes with no errors. And I kid you not, I'm gonna brag. This is my bragging moment for my student, that one student. No errors, a 2-year project that all the interns couldn't complete. He completed it in 40 minutes when his ed coach came back up from her coffee, and the manager checked it, and he was, and that's, you know, not all of the individuals are like that, but my point is, don't hire based on what's written on the resume.
Right.
Okay? Please make sure that you are understanding what this individual might come with. Some students are kind of going to the other extent of not just the resume and cover letter, but bringing with them a piece of paper, especially if they might be nonverbal or on the opposite spectrum and resumes just drive, interviewing drives them crazy.
Mhm.
They will bring a piece of paper that says what their strengths and skills are. And please look at that, because man, you're going to get an individual who does amazing work.
Yes.
And so his internship ended there. And then soon after, he was in a volunteer position at the Mind Institute, but they created a position for him. I want to put that out there as well. There were positions out there open. They created a position for him to work 15 hours a week for all the data entry they do with testing and assessments, and he's working there successfully. So I'm telling you about success stories, and I absolutely am proud of how prepared our students go in. So the benefits for people who are going to college and are part of programs that says workability and myself and other programs that they might go through or utilizing career centers and internships, they're coming in prepared and ready to work. So the workplace retention is number one. You're not going to have to, you won't see that turnover constantly. You won't worry about, the training more people, paying for more people. They stick around for a long time, and they do an amazing job, and they bring color to your workplace and education. And I think that's really important. So
okay.
I will stop right there.
Okay, thank you so much, Tasneem. I appreciate it. Time is of essence right now, so we're going to move on to the next topic. And so it's been a very good discussion. It's like we really need more time than what we actually have, especially with all these fabulous panelists with all this wealth of knowledge. But we also want to give everyone who attended today tools to move forward. So we want to start discussing, where do we start to make the change at our departments? So let's start with like the organizational culture of it. Talent comes in different forms. Kim, would you like to talk about this briefly?
Sure, I can address this briefly. I think that really, from my perspective, working in several programs that specifically benefit individuals with disabilities, working at the Department of Social Services on in-home supportive services, on our deaf and blind programs, on adult protective services, I think it goes back to the phrase that is often used in the disability movement, nothing about us without us, which is kind of the concept of don't make policy decisions about us without including us. And my interest in working on policy issues around various services that people with disabilities access comes from my own accessing of those services and sort of seeing where things didn't work well. And so when I went to work for the Department of Social Services, it was sort of an uphill battle because I was one of the only people who had used those services before who was now working in that role. And I think that I had to, first of all, prove to a lot of the people that I worked with that I wasn't just hired for my disability, that I was hired for my skills and my abilities and my education and all of that. But also it was changing how we talk about the people that we serve, how we talk about the people that we serve, how we talk about the services that we provide, and what we do to keep making sure that voices are heard across the board. And I think it's an uphill battle, but I think that having more discussions about this at a wider scale, not just among people who are kind of preaching to the choir, is a good way to start to change organizational culture.
Great, thank you so much, Kim. And I know that Tasneem had talked about this kind of in recruitment efforts. And she was basically, the underlying message was just don't leave talent on the table, because you want to bust through those myths of hiring individuals with disabilities. So briefly, Vance, can you go over some intentional recruitment methods that will be helpful for people?
Sure, I think it's a couple of things. I think one is just understanding you have to be proactive, right? We can't wait for talent to come to us. Go out and get talent. I mean, think about it from the perspective of like a basketball program, right? I can't just wait and expect that talent's going to come to me. I got to go out there and recruit it. So we need to go and meet people where they are and fortunately, California's disability community is very organized, and that provides an opportunity for us to go in and reach into that talent pool and find qualified, skilled applicants that are going to really help us within our internal organizations get to the next level of where we want to be. And real quick, I just want to say that we've got to really move away from this mindset of, you know, look, we're somehow doing this because we want to be charitable, or we want to do the right thing, or we want to, right, be selfish about this. Okay, I want my organization to be the best organization, which means I want the best talent, and I'm going to do whatever I got to do to get that talent. And if that means actively recruiting, if it means providing a reasonable accommodation, then it is absolutely well worth that effort and that investment to do so, if the end result is getting a fantastic candidate.
Thank you so much, Vance. I appreciate you. And so a lot of the conversation earlier talked about having awareness first, like having disability awareness first, so we can break through the myths, so we can take advantage of the benefits of hiring individuals with disabilities. So Araceli, can you speak to how to conduct interviews while practicing this disability awareness while we are in our recruitment efforts?
Okay. So thanks. That's a really good question, because when we're hiring, I've done a lot of hiring throughout the years, and I'm always looking for talent. I'm not necessarily looking for a mini me. I'm looking for talent. So I'm open-minded to individuals coming in, and I'm looking for special skills in that person that can really make a big difference in the department. I have found throughout the years that our traditional interviewing process is not always a best gauge of how a person is going to perform on the job. So I do rely on, you know, I do have individuals that show up, and we encourage other materials that can tell the story better than they are able to face-to-face. But we've also been in an environment where we haven't always had the opportunity to meet with people face-to-face. We've done everything from a video conferencing interviews to phone interviews, because we're looking for talent and not necessarily looking at a person and trying to make judgments or trying to decide if that's going to be a good candidate based on that particular performance. So we make sure that we're very open about the accommodation process, the reasonable accommodation for interviewing. We make sure that we have those things in place, and we make sure that when we're walking into the interviews that is not playing into the decision making of our interviews. We're looking for talent. So the important thing for us is to know what talent we're looking for and what skill and knowledge set that we're looking for. And just being sure that our questions are reflective of that, I am asking for, I am posing questions that's going to bring out the skill set of that individual. And that's where I need to live to be able to get the best talent. And it has served us well in hiring the right people for the right job.
Yes, thank you so much, Araceli, because you did touch briefly, and it was also mentioned earlier in the discussion regarding reasonable accommodations. And so, you know, some of the myths behind reasonable accommodation is that they're expensive or it's just not attainable. But we have to understand that reasonable accommodations are needed throughout the hiring process, as well as needed when an employee is hired. We have to let people with disabilities, as Joe said at the beginning, help them to have that equal feel, you know, and so that's where reasonable accommodations come in. And it can be it doesn't even have to be a piece of equipment. It can be an accommodation that might entail having more breaks taken because, you know, you might have a certain anxiety or something as well too. So the important part of a reasonable accommodation is to, the interactive process is to communicate and be very clear on how you can accommodate an individual to give them that equal feel. So I don't know if Michael, you have anything you wanted to add about reasonable accommodations briefly?
Sure. Um, I
Did you press
example.
Alt V, Mike? Did you got Alt V? Alt V?
Uh, let's see here. There's the V.
There you go. Okay. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, finally. No, I just wanted to share a quick story as far as accommodation, and this may predate a few people, but the emphasis of what Shannon is saying about the cost of accommodations. I was working at this time for the Memphis Center for Independent Living in Memphis, Tennessee, and I had this one consumer who was a polio survivor. And this was before TSA came in and at the airports. And she worked there at the airport, and she would work, you know, you put your bag on the thing and go through and everything. So she came to me because she was receiving benefits, but then it was like they were going to let her go because, you know, they were saying, hey, well, she just can't, you know, she can't take the breaks. She got to stay online and she got to do all of this. So I went out and I talked to the supervisor, and he actually told me that she was one of his best workers. And if we could find a way to keep her, that he would give her a $2 an hour raise. And so I said, okay, well, let's just go out to the gate and see. So we walked out to the gate, and as I was walking out the room, there was a stool sitting there, and I picked up the stool, and we walked out to the gate, and I set the stool down, and I had the young lady sit on the stool. And I said, can you do your job from there? She said, yes. I asked him, I said, can she do her job sitting there? He said, yes. And so I said, well, I guess she got a $2 raise per hour. So it didn't cost anything. The accommodation was already there. But most of the time, people will think that when you look for an accommodation, as Shannon said, you're looking for some big piece of equipment and all of these things. And that's not actually true. And that made her day, and that made his day. And a few years ago, I found out that she finally passed away. But that was the life of her career, and she was there every day at work, and she did the job just with that little, just with that little accommodation that was made for her. That didn't cost the company nothing, because the stool was just sitting there in the corner doing anything.
Great. That's a good story, Michael. Thank you. I mean, that just reminds us how important accommodations can be, and how minimal it can have on your budget, and how financially for the department. So we're going to move on to Mark Ehrlichman so he can introduce the next item on our agenda.
Thank you, Shannon. This has really been an amazing conversation. I'm really grateful for the other panelists for sharing all their experience and knowledge. Of course, what today really is, it continues to be, is about recognizing and bringing onto our teams valuable staff with disabilities. So very excited to hear about one example where this has worked, and it worked quite well. At this time, I'd like to introduce Marie Erdl-Reich and William Lane, who are going to speak to us about their experience working together as manager and staff, first through a state internship program, and then as a direct hire and now an employee of the Department of Industrial Relations. Marie and William, you could please introduce yourselves and share your experiences working through the internship program, and now how you are working together at the Department of Industrial Relations.
Hello, Marie.
Hi, William. Yep, we can hear and see you.
Okay. Is Marie, are you here?
I'm here. I was muted. Go ahead, William.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm starting. Okay. Well then, I guess I will have to do this a little bit off the cuff. So I apologize for any extraneous stammering and other unnecessary remarks that take up time like this I'm saying right now. First of all, thank you so much for having us here. It's a great honor. As mentioned, my name is William. I'm a 27-year-old office technician with the Department of Industrial Relations under Marie's supervision. I graduated from St. Mary's College, California, summa cum laude. And oh yes, I'm on the autism spectrum. Almost forgot to mention that. So I first entered the role of the Department of Industrial Relations around 2017, and it was in large part thanks to something called the State Internship Program. Essentially, it allowed Marie and the department to try me out through a partially subsidized, I guess, program, if you will. This in turn was facilitated through a nonprofit agency called East Bay Innovations, which helps local people with disabilities, developmental disabilities to be specific, live independently in their communities. From there, the position took off. Initially, my primary task was taking calls from constituents, sort of like a directory number. Yes, people on the spectrum can answer the phone if you give them prompts. Then my duties began to expand. I also took on something called AB 1513 back pay claims. That was awesome because essentially you were being paid to give money to migrant laborers who were denied breaks. Then FisCal rolled out. Some of you may be familiar with that. I took that on. Eventually, after a year, so around 2018, I moved from an intern to a full-time employee. Then 2 years after that, or is it 3 years? Sorry, again, had to.
It's 2.
Okay. I became permanent, which meant that I didn't have to worry about losing my job in the near future, which was awesome. Working under Marie has been fantastic. I'm pretty pro disclosure, so I disclosed to. Well, I guess disclosure was kind of part of the package if you're coming through the state internship program. Marie has been a fantastic and supportive boss, even helping me interpret nonverbal cues from other co-workers. I guess you could call my primary accommodation would be to have a job coach from East Bay Innovations come by and check on me every now and then, and also act as a sounding board for sort of office social questions. And that was very invaluable, particularly early on. As months turned into years, the support gradually tapered off, but I'm still able to reach out to East Bay Innovations at a moment's notice and get any advice needed. All in all, for me at least, I think it's worked out fantastically. It's great to be employed at all, considering that for people on the autism spectrum, the unemployment rate is speculated to be higher than the general disabled population. I feel like I'm doing a good thing by working at this department. I certainly like the work. I have no intentions of jumping ship anytime soon. The one thing I would love nothing more though is to see more people like me. And I think that's where I'll choose to end it. Hopefully that's a good ending. I don't know. Actually, I'm on the spectrum. I don't know these things.
I think that's a great segue for me to just say really briefly that a lot of the things that people have already said today echo the experience that William and I have gone through, that the Department of Industrial Relations has seen in hiring somebody on the autism spectrum through this SB 644 internship to hire process. William has been an exceptional staff member and team member. We've seen, I mean, he sort of gave his run of duties, but pretty much anything we throw at William, he's always able to take on and absorb and move forward and offer suggestions, and oftentimes has better ways of doing things than we have already. And he's sort of indomitable. He'll continue to work through things that other people may stop on, and I am fully in line with William in hoping that we are able to hire more people through these systems or through these programs, because it's been really successful for us. And if I had all Williams on staff, that would be awesome. I would love it. Everybody's unique and an individual, but if everyone could be as dedicated and communicative and clear as William, that would be helpful, I think, for everybody. So.
Flattered.
All right, Mark, did you have anything else? Thank you, William. Thank you, Marie. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm trying to join. Okay.
Okay.
I'm back.
You're back. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's not much more, I mean, really we can say about the value of hiring individuals with disabilities than just watching William and Marie talk about their experiences working together. So anything that follows that is probably going to be a disappointment. So thank you, William. Thank you, Marie, for not just your willingness to speak up today, but really your work together. You guys provide excellent services to Californians, as William has described, and we're proud to have worked with you. So before we wrap up today, I definitely want to offer some resources and information to all the managers that joined us today. We want to help you diversify your workforce, to find talent like William and others that will round out your workforce, provide the skills and talents that you need, and diversify your workforce. Everything that we talked about today is absolutely true. We consider our employees with disabilities assets, as we consider all our employees. And it just brings something different and unique to the workforce that has made us a better department, and many other departments as well. So the California Department of Rehabilitation, as a lead agency in the state in providing employment services to individuals with disabilities, also provides services to employers. So we are very proud of our ability to provide assistance to employers seeking to either recruit, hire, retain, or promote individuals with disabilities into their workforce. And this includes state departments. Whenever you may have a question about hiring or supporting an employee with disability, please reach out. We can definitely send you talent, like William, help direct you to resources, for example, on the limited exam and appointment program. And we can provide you with disability awareness and etiquette training. And so I think one of the questions that came up in the Q&A was, do we have a training curriculum for supervisors and employees on bias and accommodations? We have resources. We do provide disability etiquette and awareness training. We have our disability access section here in the department that can provide information on making your materials accessible. And we can definitely connect you with information about accommodations like the Job Accommodations Network, as well as if you're working with one of our staff anywhere in the state. Our counseling staff can provide you assistance as well as we have business specialists that can come out and work with you to identify possible accommodations and resources. So yes, absolutely we do. If you're not familiar with the LEAP program, the Limited Examination Deployment Program, we can definitely provide you with information and links. There's actually on the CalHR webpage, there's information on LEAP, and we have LEAP resources in each of our offices. So in a nutshell, the LEAP program is an alternative to the traditional testing and hiring process, allowing applicants to demonstrate knowledge, skills, and abilities through an on-the-job testing or job examination period. In order to be eligible for the LEAP program, individuals come to us, to the Department of Rehabilitation, to be certified as having a disability. And we put that information on the CalHR's database. So when these candidates apply for jobs, they apply through the LEAP process. As a manager, you probably already are seeing LEAP candidates applying for your jobs because they're showing up on the general hiring lists. But we definitely can work with you if you are not getting sufficient talent or candidates to make sure we send people your way. So absolutely keep us in mind. William and Marie talked about the SB 644, or what we call the LEAP State Internship Project. That's a project that the Department of Rehabilitation, in partnership with Cal HR and the Department of Developmental Services, worked on to provide for a internship program, the internship opportunity of about 512 hours, or a minimum of 512 hours, to develop the skills and abilities to meet the minimum qualifications of the job classification in which they would like to get into. Those individuals who successfully complete the on-the-job internship can gain list eligibility for hire by the state of California. So what William did, William completed his internship and he was eligible for the Office Assistant General classification because of that. But he also, because of his experience and because of the support of his employers, they supported and encouraged him to take the Office Technician typing. I think it's the typing. Correct me if I'm wrong, William. But he,
it was the general.
Okay. Great.
Because reasons.
Yeah. Well, I don't type, so that's the one I'd have to take. So, but you definitely did well on the Office Technician General list, and you got on the list and you were hired. So it was a great win for the department as well as for you. And so if you're interested in the internship program, and really the internship program is designed to help individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities that are eligible for DOR services as well as services through the Department of Developmental Services to get into state employment. And so this is one of the tools and one of the avenues, and this is one of the questions that came up in the Q&A. This is a way for the state of California to bring in qualified individuals that may be on the spectrum or may have an intellectual or other developmental disability to get into state civil service. The state internship program actually allows the departments to bring on their interns as volunteers, but the interns are paid, and they're paid wages through the program and through support of what we call a regional center system. So we previously placed interns into office assistant positions, but we're definitely happy to work with you if you have different classifications that you are needing talent for, and we'll work with you to try to create an internship opportunity in your department as well. We also, the other thing that we do, we also provide students with disabilities paid work experience opportunities where we're compensating the students for the work experience, but that they're working at different employers throughout the community. And we really are excited about expanding and extending it to state agencies who may be interested in having a student intern or having a student provide some work and some support to them while the student gets some valuable work experience. So if you're interested in the student as well, whether it's 100 or 200 hours working at your department, we absolutely would love to try to connect you with a paid work experience student as well. So how to get a hold of us for either disability etiquette or awareness training, to participate in the state internship program, or to look for assistance in your hiring through LEAP or other means, or if you're interested in just assistance or information about accommodations or disability etiquette and awareness training, you can reach us at our webpage. Actually, we actually have a page specifically for state agencies and departments, and it's at dor.ca.gov/home/employer state, all one word, employer state. So I don't know, I think we can get that information out, Shannon. If not, if you just go to our DOR webpage and click for I'm an employer, it'll actually take you to the state employment site.
It's posted in the chat.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome. I didn't do it, but you're welcome.
No, thank you, Connie. We also have an email address that you can contact us, which is workforce.development@dor.ca.gov. So it's workforce, all one word, .development@dor.ca.gov. So you can contact our workforce development staff, or you can call us at our number. It's 916-558-5423, 1-916-558-5423. As you can tell, we're very excited to work with you. hopefully you're excited to work with us and giving opportunities for both you to meet your talent needs, as well as giving opportunities for talented individuals to achieve employment with the state. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, and really appreciated your participating and your being on board with us today, celebrating National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So Shannon, I'll give it back to you. And if we have a few minutes, hopefully if people have questions, we can answer them.
Thank you, Mark. I need to check with my producer on the questions though, because this concludes our panel discussion. And we do want to thank everyone for attending. We would especially like to thank all of our panel members for their participation, for their knowledge, for tools and suggestions. So as we go out and move forward to fill positions and provide equal opportunities to all Californians, please keep this session in mind and the tools that were provided today to move forward towards ensuring a statewide workforce that reflects a California for all. So now we will have closing remarks from Andy, but before we do that, I just want to check in with Connie because I know we had some Q&As and how those might possibly be addressed since we're time is of essence right now.
Yeah, I think we've addressed some of them, and for those that haven't been addressed, or if there's additional questions, feel free to send your questions our way at questions@dor.ca.gov, and we'll add that to the chat so that you can email those questions to us, and we'll make sure that they get answered.
Okay, thank you so much, Connie. Miss Andy? Uh-oh, you're muted. Okay. Stand by. Technical difficulties. And thank you again, Miss Connie, for addressing how questions will be answered, because I know there was a lot of valuable information provided here, and I know there will be follow-up questions. So thank you for that, Miss Connie. Okay, Miss Andy?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
I don't think you can see me, but that's all
No,
right.
we could see you.
Oh, you can hear me
yes.
and see me, even better. So hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. I'm Andy Mudrick. I'm the Chief Deputy Director here at the Department of Rehabilitation. I'm also a person with a disability called osteogenesis imperfecta, or brittle bone disorder. Presentations have been amazing. We've heard about how important diversity is in the workforce, and we know that. And we know that in terms of serving the public and serving all of the public in the diverse communities in California, we best do that through having staff who reflect the diversity of the state. And we've heard and we know that disability is just another piece of diversity, and that folks with disabilities have incredible talent, just like folks from all communities do, and that they have, many of us with disabilities have really strong knowledge of disability systems, how to navigate systems, bureaucracies, and the accessibility needs that benefit all of our staffs. We've seen from our panelists some extremely well-qualified professionals from diverse backgrounds, including diversity, but also including other aspects of diversity. And it's because of that diversity that they bring added value to the workforce. I think true social change really happens through experience and through people getting to know us and appreciate our value. I think of our LGBTQ siblings who have gained increasing rights over the past several decades, in part because they've come out and been who they are and people have gotten to know them. I think another parallel are where employers used to be reluctant to hire women for fear that they would get pregnant, and employers learned the strong value of hiring women in the workforce. And it's the same for people with disabilities. So I'm so proud of our staff and the panelists for being open about their disabilities. I think as leaders, that is one thing we can do to model the success that we as people with disabilities have and the strong skills that we bring to the workforce. So just want to thank the panelists for being so open and sharing their stories. I want to thank our wonderful staff for planning and executing this tremendous seminar. And I would encourage you all to think about hiring people with disabilities as part of your diversity efforts and use some of the tools that we shared with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. That concludes the presentation, and everyone have a fabulous day today and make it great.